Welcome into the Cougar Tailgate, where BYU fandom lives. Here's your host, Lauren McLean.
What's up, everyone? I appreciate you all listening on this beautiful Saturday. We've got a lot of fun things to talk about today, including our favorite fan moments, where we got to meet one of our favorite athletes. Plus, we'll discuss if we could bring back one former player to join this year's basketball team. Who would it be? And how about for the football team? I got some great responses. And later in the show, former BYU basketball standout Johnathan Tavernari joins me to talk about his thoughts on the men's and women's season and what he sees for the future of BYU men's basketball. But first, with me now is BYUtv Sports senior coordinating producer, David Phillips Jr. How's it going, Junior?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So we were discussing this before. Now that basketball season is over, you're transitioning more to covering baseball and softball. How are you feeling about that transition?
Good. I'd personally, I'd love to see BYU basketball still playing, but that's just how they had a great run. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's nice. The weather's getting warmer and stuff, and it's starting to feel a little more like baseball and softball season. So it's good.
It feels so good. I'm loving it. All right, you mentioned the men's basketball team that you'd like to see them playing a little longer, and a lot of the local media has been discussing this week whether the men's basketball season was considered a success or not after losing in the third round of the NIT. So we're not going to get into that, but I was curious, if possible, which former player fans would have loved to add to the team to have made it an even more successful season, and we'll get your responses later. But Junior, I'm curious, who would you choose if you could get any former player to add to the team? Who would it be?
So this was tough because I think sometimes the obvious answer would be Jimmer or Tyler Hawes, kind of that instant points. But I think I'm going to have to go with either Brandon Davies or Yoli Childs. Someone big, down low. It's hard to choose between this. I think we'll go recency bias. I think we'll go Yoli Childs because he could hit the three as well.
I like it.
Bring him back, and I think it would have been a little bit of a different season. Heck, even Gavin Baxter. I would have taken Gavin Baxter back for the season.
I know. Really, honestly, if everyone was healthy, it would have been a completely different season. But you can't play that game because injuries are just part of basketball and football and any sports. It's going to happen year after year. But yes, if Gavin Baxter and others were healthy, it would have been a different season. But I'm with you. I said Brandon Davies.
Okay.
The team, like you said, needed a big guy. And he had a great career for the Cougars. He averaged about 18 points his senior year. And that's great for a big guy. And he averaged 8 rebounds a game, and he had a handful of steals. He just was a really well-rounded, solid big. And I don't think he had a ton of injuries either. He was consistently there for the Cougars. And BYU really needed something like that this year.
Yeah, he was such a force, and he was so much fun to watch.
All right, now same question for football. I think there is some amazing talent on this year's team. Jaren Hall is solid with some great hands at wide receiver, lots of talent at tight end. Kalani has added some standout grad transfers on defense. But which former player would you bring back to add some depth to this year's squad if you could on football?
I think I would go with Jamal Williams. I mean, I'm excited about Chris Brown. I'm excited about that, but just a proven back and the personality. It just doesn't get any better than Jamal Williams. He's fun to watch. His interaction with the fans, and he was just a beast running the ball. And you knew no matter what, he could run the ball. It was him, and I feel very confident with Jaren Hall. Like I had thought Taysom Hill, but I feel like Jaren Hall can definitely fill that role where he can run, he can throw, he can do all that. So I'm going to have to go with Jamal Williams.
I love it. And get out of my head, Junior. I thought of a running back too. But speaking of Jamal Williams, the team was great when he was a part of the team, but I don't even remember the records. I just remember how fun it was watching Jamal Williams, and he almost let you be a part of his life as fans. Like, he was so integrated with the fans and did so much fun stuff. And like you, I loved his personality. But the running back I'm going with, it's got to be a healthy Luke Staley.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
With Tyler Algier gone, it's got to be a running back, right?
Yeah.
Luke Staley, the Doak Walker Award winner, arguably the best running back in BYU history. If his body could hold up, Junior, I think he had the potential to be an NFL great. So if I could add one former player to this year's squad, I would add some depth at running back with Luke Staley.
Yeah, that's a good call. Luke was so great. I mean, great hands out of the backfield too. He just, it was so much fun to watch.
He had a fire about him. And here's what you guys said. At Sydney K. Dameron said, I deeply miss the consistency and peace of mind of having Tyler Haws on the team. That's like you said, Junior. I felt nervous. I never felt nervous when the ball was in his hands. And for football, Taysom Hill all day long. There just has not been a more exciting football player for BYU, in my opinion. So Sydney went with Tyler Haws and Taysom Hill. Great picks. At Frankham25 said, that's a tough one. I'd love to see Jimmer Fredette play in the Marriott Center again. This year's team needed a scorer. And for football, I'd love Ronnie Jenkins back. He was so fun to watch and run the ball. Ronnie Jenkins would be fun.
That's a good poll. That's a good poll too.
Well, we're obviously all thinking similar things, right?
Yeah.
A strong runner for BYU. At Scott Warner 18 said, my favorite player to watch at BYU ever, referring to Jimmer Fredette. So he's on the Jimmer bandwagon too. At S. Dottel said, this is hard because I want to choose players from my time, but I think basketball, I'd have to go with Danny Ainge, and football, I'd go with Steve Young with a healthy Taysom Hill second place.
Ooh,
Danny Ainge and Steve Young back. I like it. But
that would be great.
I honestly, Jaron, like you mentioned, Jaron Hall, he is a talented quarterback. So I didn't even think quarterback at all.
No, I didn't go there either.
I mean, if you're adding depth, like, are we talking Steve Young as backup? Heck yeah, right? Or Taysom Hill? We're all about the depth, but I just think Jaron Hall's a very solid quarterback, so I wasn't even going there. And speaking of former football players, the alumni game is this coming week, and BYU announced that they are doing a meet and greet after with current and former players. And people can come take pics and get autographs signed. And I love that they're doing this. It's going to be the highlight of some little kid's life and probably a lot of adults too, if we're being honest. So,
absolutely.
Junior, what would you say is your favorite fan moment you've ever had where you got to meet one of your favorite athletes?
Oh, this is tough. And I've thought about this, and I went back and kind of back and forth on a lot of things. But I can remember being 13 years old and meeting Ty Detmer and Jim McMahon at the same thing. And wow. I had the opportunity to sit and talk with them. And I can remember being a 13-year-old and talking with Ty and looking over and being, I am bigger than a Heisman Trophy winner.
Were you? Were you actually bigger than him at 13?
Yeah, I was 6'1". I was probably skinnier, but yeah, I was 6'1" at 13. And I remember looking over at Ty and thinking, you're not much bigger than I am. And I'm 13 years old, and you won the Heisman Trophy. And just meeting Jim McMahon and just the aura of Jim McMahon. Like, Ty Detmer is like the nicest. And so was Jim. Jim was so great and so much fun. But like Jim McMahon, this guy won a Super Bowl and stuff, like just a legend. And they were both so nice and great. I mean, they're talking to like a little 13-year-old, and I'll never forget it. And stuff. And it was just kind of cool to look at these guys and be like, you're not much bigger than I am. And I remember thinking like, hey, I can do this. I can do this. This could be me in a few years. And it wasn't.
Nor was it 99.9% of the population who thinks they're going to do that. Honestly, with our jobs, you get to meet some incredible athletes, and the luster eventually kind of wears off. You're like, oh, they're just people like you and I.
Yeah.
So if you guys get the chance this coming week to go out to the alumni game, you got to do it. How do you feel about the alumni game, Junior?
I'm excited. We're covering it. And so I'm pretty excited. It's going to be a lot of fun to see some of these guys. We had on Sports Nation earlier in the week, we interviewed Max Hall, and we're talking to him, and in perfect Max Hall fashion, we were asking him, hey, are you ready? And stuff like that. And he goes, yeah, I don't know. I went out and started, throwing the ball and getting ready to see if I'm ready. And, oh, I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready to go. And it was good. And I just thought, oh my gosh, to watch Max Hall suit up again, even if it's flag football, and throw it, and he's going to be talking trash. I'm so excited. It's just so much fun to watch some of these players and interact and just see them again and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to be a fun fan atmosphere and stuff. Nobody loses in this. Everyone's a winner, and I think that's great.
So at BYU TV, are you guys doing anything special with the coverage? Are you doing special interviews and stuff
So,
throughout?
yeah, we're going to have Spencer and Jerem on the sideline, on each sideline, doing interviews throughout. So it'll be fun with current players, former players, coaches, and stuff like that. We're going to have a lot of all access. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. So if you can't go to the game, you guys, make sure you're watching it on BYU TV because it's going to be entertaining. All right, coming up, former BYU Hoops standout Johnathan Tavernari joins me to discuss the Cougs and life after basketball. This is Cougar Tailgate. Welcome back to Cougar Tailgate. I'm Lauren McLean. We talked earlier in the show about which former BYU player we'd have come join the basketball team if possible. And here with me now is one that definitely would have been an asset with his three-point shooting skills and energetic attitude. Let's welcome on former BYU guard and forward hybrid, Johnathan Tavernari. Thanks for coming on, Johnathan.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. How's everybody doing?
We're doing good, and it's good to have you here. You played about a decade of international ball and did very, very well. What are you up to these days?
I was somewhat led to retire. My wife and I had some infertility issues as we were trying to have more kids, and came back to Utah. It started getting treatment. Thankfully, it worked. We have a healthy baby boy now, and now I've been doing tech sales in different types of tech companies, and just did some things on the telecom side of things. Now I'm doing things on the financial side of things, and it's been good. It's been great.
Well, congratulations on the healthy baby boy. That is so awesome. I'm so happy for you guys. And I have no doubt that you were very successful at everything you do. But for you, what's life like after basketball? That's got to be kind of strange. You've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out how to not practice as much and not work out as much. But it's different. The one thing that I've been kind of adjusting a whole lot to is the fact that, I realize that I'm a workaholic, and, thankfully the companies that I've been around, ever since I retired the last 3 years or so have been really successful. A lot of it has been, me just wheeling things up and to happen. And it has to do with the mentality that you build as an athlete, and, that you develop that idea, that mentality, that goal, that drive. And, I wasn't playing basketball anymore. So instead of putting up 500, 1,000 shots a day, I was, working on deals, and following up and doing things the right way, business wise. And it takes a while to adapt, right? Definitely around August or so, September, I really missed basketball because that's when I would report, to Europe for training camp. And probably around February, March, April, playoff starts. It's March Madness. Those are the part of the year that I really miss basketball, because that would be the time that you kind of go towards the end of the season and go to the playoffs and conference tournaments and all of that. And, so a little bit of an adjustment there as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you've been watching this year's BYU men's basketball team, and I'm going to ask you the same question we discussed earlier in the show. After seeing this year's hoop season, if you could pick any former player from any era to come and contribute to this year's basketball team, who would it be?
Obviously, it's the tempting thing to say is, let's bring up Jimmer or Danny Ainge, right? Or somebody like, Krashimir Chosic and things like that. But I think that this year's team would probably benefit a lot from, Brandon Davies. And I think that when you look at the way that this team was, somebody like maybe Keena Young or Trent Plaisted. Probably a big man, right, because of obvious reasons with injury. But to me, we just didn't have an inside presence in terms of being able to score the ball, which to me it was very disappointing because when you look at the way Caleb Lawner plays, and you look at the way Gideon George plays, and you look at how Foose was idolized and could have been idolized more. It gives you somewhat of a woulda, coulda, shoulda, because we never saw fully. Hey, let's post up Foose and see what he does. Let's figure out a way to post the ball to Caleb and let him go back to the basket. Well, let's run a play so Gideon George gets a mismatch and goes to the post. We never saw that. We saw a lot of emotions on the perimeter. And so if I had to bring somebody back this season, it would definitely be a player that was an inside presence on the post that would complement, Alex and Spencer and Trevin and Gideon on the perimeter.
Absolutely. And I love that. I agree with that. And a lot of fans feel if Gavin Baxter, kind of as you mentioned, stayed healthy, it would have changed the season completely. But from your perspective, what was it that was hurting the Cougars there at the end of the season? They had a great start, and then towards the end of the season they started to wind down, and then in the tournament as well. What was the difference that you saw in them?
To me, it was more their mentality. You know what I mean? I think that they were mentally they were exhausted, and mentally the pressure of the world was upon their shoulders. And to me, just the way that they had to figure out a way to just win games. To me, that was kind of the whole issue. The team had no sense of urgency whatsoever. Not all the time, but there were times that you could see on the games that their sense of urgency wasn't there. I mean, none more so than the loss against Pacific. I mean, worst team in the conference, probably one of the worst one of the worst losses in the entire college basketball sphere as far as the season goes. And during that game, there were spurts of the moment that they were playing out of their mind, right? That we were sharing the ball and things like that. But there were moments when defense was like a daisical. And so to me, because of everything going on, because of injuries and a lot of hype and a lot of expectations, to me, they were mentally just, I don't want to say checked out, because they were working hard. You can never take that away from this team. They always worked hard. But to me, they were mentally tired and fatigued from all of the things that were thrown at them. And to me, they weren't able to overcome that.
And you mentioned some of the younger guys like Caleb Lohner and Foose. When you watched this team, what was the most promising thing you saw from the team this year? Kind of a positive that you took out of it?
Probably Foose, and it's not even close. I mean, I think that he has probably arguably had probably a top 10, top 15 freshman season ever. And he did really, really good, right? And by a mile, he was the most promising thing that we saw all year, mainly because he was probably the only underclassman that constantly played, right? Unfortunately, we saw a lot of Caleb regressing offensively. He was an afterthought. Defensively, right, he was solid. Rebounding, he was amazing. But you got to score baskets to win games. And, I don't know why it was the reason. Everybody has obviously their own opinion, their perspective of things. But, definitely hoping that next year, this summer, a lot of things change and that Caleb can be more offensively minded. And, but the only positive thought that I saw all of this was definitely, Foose, because nobody expected him to be that good. I don't think he expected to play as much as he did and be that good. And so the fact that he was and he delivered, definitely something that it gives us all hope that as long as we got some some solid perimeter players around him, BYU basketball for the next few years is going to have solid seasons.
He really was so much fun to watch, and it was fun to watch him progress. A guy that does know how to shoot the ball is Alex Barcelo, and I feel like he has been a very special player for BYU. Do you see him possibly getting a shot at the next level, whether here or internationally?
Oh, absolutely. I personally, I think Alex should have left last year. And the reason why I say that, because you got to strike while the iron is hot. Look no further than Zach Wilson. And, I mean, Zach used is Zach good enough to be a second-round pick? Absolutely. Would Zach be a second-round pick this year? We don't know. But we don't have to know, because Zach left at the right time, at the right moment, when the iron was hot, did things the right way, timing and everything. And so it became something that Zach did everything that he needed to do at the right time. And to me, Alex coming back this year was how do you top an All-American season? And, if he's an All-American this year, he might be another, honorable mention if that. But, I think to me, he will definitely have a shot to play in Europe. In the NBA, I don't know, especially how the game is. And, if you watch Duke and Texas Tech and the other teams yesterday and today, you know how athletic and how tall and long you have to be. But that's not a knock on Alex at all. I think that he can have definitely a bright future in Europe, or he can go the way of the G League, kind of how Yoli and TJ did. And so he definitely has a chance to play the next level.
I love it. I love all this insight. And Jonathan, you were such a fun player to watch when you were at BYU. When you think about your playing days for the Cougars, what do you miss most?
The fact that I was probably what I missed the most is just the atmosphere, right? I mean, when you're in college, you're young, you don't know any better. Playing at the Marriott Center, we won a lot of games. We probably from my freshman year until probably 2011, 2012. That's probably the best 6 years of stretch in BYU basketball history. And when I look back, I don't think about my individual accolades that I won or my records. I think about, after games when I would be on top of the Cosmo Bill, ringing the victory bell, jumping up and down with Cosmo, thousands of students surrounding the van in the area. I would think back of going to class the next day and just seeing everybody cheering, talking to them about the game. Conference tournaments in Las Vegas. I went to high school in Vegas, being able to hang out with a lot of my friends and my people down there. College was a beautiful time. And I love the fact that now I can look back and, I appreciate much more now what we accomplished back then. I mean, 6 straight NCAA tournaments in 6 years. We won 4 Mountain West Conference championships. I won 3 straight, 4 years finishing the top 25. I mean, the stuff that we did there, for BYU, in BYU terms, and the way our program is, that's just unheard of. We've had a drought of winning championships and so on. So I cherish the memories, made a lot of friendships that I stay in touch with them. Lee Camard is one of my best friends, and, seeing the success that he's having with the girls team is amazing. And so it to me, the more I grow older, I also grow to appreciate my time at BYU, because, we did things there that I had never done before in school history. First season, we won 30 games. It was my senior year. And so you started seeing that, hey, what we did then, it's actually, it's pretty darn impressive, because it hasn't been done since, or consistently hasn't been done either.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up Lee Camard. He really has done a fantastic job with the women's side. We actually had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned that you guys in the Marriott Center would play baseball or wiffle ball with Dave Rose. Is that something you enjoyed doing as well?
It was not something I enjoyed doing. In fact, I'm going to find Lauren on Twitter, and I'm going to tag you. It was the worst day of the year, because we always did it after like a loss, or after we had a blowout win, and coach did it for us to kind of relax. And that's just, that just to me is the magic of Dave Rose. And he always did it to kind of get us in the right frame of mind. And I hated it. 1, because I was always wired to practice. And 2 was because, in Brazil, I never grew up playing softball or wiffle ball or anything else other than football, and soccer or basketball. And it just, and there was a day, I don't know if he mentioned this to you, that he full on showed up with the entire BYU baseball uniform. I mean, he showed up stacked as a baseball player, and he had, just the uniform, the pinstripes and everything. And so, I'm very, very happy for the success that the girls team, the women's team are having. I'm glad that Lee's a big part of it, and I'll tell you this about Lee. Out of all the players I played with, either in the Brazilian national team, in the Olympics, World Championships, out of all the teams I play in the Euro Leagues and all of that, Lee is by a mile the best, most complete basketball player I've ever played with. And, I love him. I absolutely cherish our friendship, and I'm amazed the player that he was. And, because Jimmer's senior year was such a big deal in Jimmer Mania, and rightfully so, he accomplished everything that he did. Him and Jackson get a ton of credit for what they accomplished. But, Lee and I, we got 3 straight championships, which it hadn't been done, and he hasn't been done since, you got to go back to the late 20s, early 30s. Greg Lavell went over this one. And so Lee and I cherish our relationship because of how successful we were because of each other.
That's so awesome. And what a compliment to him. I love it. Former BYU men's basketball standout, Johnathan Tavernari, joining me. Thank you so much for taking the time, Johnathan. You were incredible, and good luck with your baby boy and your wife and everything moving forward.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. If you guys ever need anything, let me know. And, as always and forever, go Cougs.
All right. I love it. Thank you so much, Johnathan.
Thank you, guys.
And that does it for us today. Thanks again to Johnathan Tavernari and David Phillips Jr. for coming on the show with me. You can join the Cougar Tailgate virtually, of course, every Saturday at noon Mountain Time, or download, rate, and review our podcast on Apple, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or on BYURadio.org. This is Cougar Tailgate.